Good morning. As people are getting settled in, let me start by introducing myself. For those of you that I don't know or don't know me, my name is Nathan Skalski. I work in public affairs here at UBCO. So we're going to begin with remarks from our Deputy Vice-Chancellor. Following Professor Buzzard's remarks, I'm going to join her up on stage and I'm going to be asking her a few questions. Now, obviously, the questions that I ask are not going to reflect all the burning questions that everyone here in the room has percolating in their minds. So obviously during the Q&A session, the microphone is going to be brought down to the right into the center of the room here, and you're welcome to come up and pose questions of your own. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our Deputy Vice-Chancellor of UBC and Principal of our campus, Professor Deborah Buzzard.
Yes. Thank you, Nathan. As I was walking over here this morning, I saw what I think of as a woodpecker, and I can't identify the species, on the outside of the new library building. I don't know if others of you have noticed them. Rob Einerson and I were taking a look at where they removed the crane last night, the space that's in the middle now of the building, and I couldn't understand why there was brown, beige snow falling into the courtyard. And finally we went down a level and we could look up and we could see the side of the building where the brown sort of insulating foam is stuck on the outside. And there was a huge woodpecker digging a hole that was so, he eventually went right into the building. So I think we already have someone who's taken up residence in the TLC. And may at some point be entombed if they happen to put up the siding without him, and possibly the babies escaping. I don't know. It's all a little bit scary, actually. I'm also concerned that the insulation won't be there when we close the building, and it'll be a cold patch. But that's just for our facilities guys now. I've transferred the worry to you, so I can let it go. Which in some ways is a metaphor for most of my work, I would add. However, officially now I'll start on my formal remarks. It's great to see such a great turnout. I wish we could still all be outside. This is now an annual event, sort of a roundup on the last year. Let me begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan Nation, our wonderful partners here in education in the region. I hope that many of you had an opportunity earlier this month to witness the historic apology made by President Ono for UBC's role in the residential school system. It was part of the Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Centre at Vancouver campus's opening event. And I have to say, I attended, and I was very pleased to see representatives of students, faculty and staff from this campus also there. So thank you to those who made the journey down to Vancouver. It was a very moving event, and it was an excellent speech, and I'd encourage you to go online and read it. It's posted on the President's website. It took a look at our responsibility writ large. Our responsibility in part for the history of residential schools, as well as the overall notion that we today have a collective responsibility to acknowledge and learn from the mistakes of the past. And I think that's something that we're really beginning to understand here on this campus. I'm very pleased that we're now moving forward with a new Aboriginal strat plan. It's being developed aligned with the larger strategic plan that UBC is developing. And there's been great engagement here on this campus in that regard. Let me now turn to looking back over the last year. This year was a banner year in terms of the growth and size of our campus. We had over 9,000 students. On a typical day, that would mean that on campus there were probably at least 11,000 people, with all of the staff and faculty and the other support staff we have here. We have a record number of students in all levels of our programming, from the undergraduate right through to PhDs. We have record numbers of international students, Aboriginal students, and we're anticipating graduating 90 Aboriginal students at our convocations this summer. And they will be in everything from PhDs to bachelor's degrees, and they will be in all faculties. What a tremendous achievement that is. So huge kudos to our Aboriginal Access programming. Thank you. We are, I think, as we, maybe it's typical for teenagers, we're beginning to develop a sense of our own identity. And we have been working quite hard this year to try and understand what it is about us, we here at UBCO, that attracts people to come and want to be part of our community, either as faculty and staff or, of course, as students. And I think we've come up with a sense that this phrase, which I will read to you, perhaps embraces what we think we're offering. UBC's Okanagan campus welcomes and celebrates people who are driven by purpose and who thrive in an innovative and supportive community that empowers them to have impact. I think that's actually pretty good. I like to think that that's actually encompassing why I chose to come here, because I thought it was an innovative place where one could make a difference. And I like to think that that's probably why all of you are here, too. We're innovators. I will say within UBC we're disruptors in the nicest possible way. We work collaboratively, inclusively on this campus, and we have a distinct intention to have people thrive here in our community. And I think those are things that really set us apart. And that's a wonderful thing about being at UBC. It very much came out in the Aspire visioning process, the document that we worked on back in 2014. And I'm delighted to say that that Aspire document is referenced right at the beginning of the new strat plan as a foundational document, not just for this campus, but for UBC as an institution. And that, to me, is fabulous. That says that we have actually influenced the other campus through that document that we collectively created. So it's good to see that now referenced in this next plan, which will see the next 10 years. So I think that's a very significant thing that's been done by this community. I'd like to thank every one of you, and I know there were many who took part in all the different steps towards this new strat plan. We had online consultations and working groups and so on, and some of you have spent a great deal of time contributing to the different parts of the new plan. I'm looking forward to us rolling it out over the next couple of years. Let me just return to our students, and of course, because of the timing of this event, they've all gone, so I can perhaps talk about them with impunity. They are, of course, the reason that we're all here. They're the reason that this campus was created, and I'm very proud of the way that our students have themselves invested with us in building the campus for the future. So of course, the big thing that they invested in was to put down the first donation towards the Teaching and Learning Center. But they continue to invest by partnering with us in, for example, the Ombuds office and in other ways on campus. So they're a very, very important piece of making this campus the kind of inclusive place that it is. Michael Judd, and I'm not sure, is Michael here today? I don't see him. Michael is a recent graduate of the Allard School of Law, and he is our new Okanagan campus ombudsperson. So an important resource for students and a way that we can provide them with service that reflects the kind of service available in Vancouver. We have, of course, new leadership in the Students' Union. Amal is the new president. She was a vice president, so we have some continuity from last year, which is a good thing. And we have a new representative for the UBC board, Shola Fashanu, and I congratulate them both on their election to their new roles, and I look forward to working with them as representatives for the community. I now turn to something that's a little bit sad news that most of you are aware of, and that is that Cynthia Matheson, my longtime sidekick and a fixture on this campus since the very beginning, our provost has decided that she will not be seeking a second term. She is quite excited about going back to do some teaching in psychology. Cynthia's really been here from the very beginning. She served in numerous roles to get us to where we are today. Most notably in the long term, her deanship of the Barber School, and of course as head of psychology and computer science, and most recently as our provost. She's overseen the development of the faculties and the College of Graduate Studies. She's a tremendous supporter of teaching excellence. She created the ALT Fund, and she has spearheaded the development of campus-wide co-op. All things that Cynthia has led. She is a great scholar. She's wise counsel. She's fun. She has an infectious laugh, and sometimes we just can't stop laughing at some of the things we get involved with. I will miss her greatly as a member of the leadership team, but I look forward to seeing her when she comes back next year to take up some teaching in the Barber School. So thank you, Cynthia, for your contributions. We have a search underway for her successor. We'll be starting to interview next month, so it's moving along quite well. We have a great committee. Some of you may be serving on it, I think, and we're looking forward to an excellent search. This last year, we had an announcement that was actually quite change-making for our campus, and that is, for the first time since the campus was founded, we were allocated a significant number of new seats. Over 150 seats have been allocated to the campus for engineering, advanced manufacturing engineering specifically, and for computer science. Funding of seats is how the campus gets funded. It will allow us, of course, to hire more professors to teach those new students, and that will allow us to expand our engineering and computer science programs, both of which are in very high demand. So we're excited about that. It will, of course, bring pressures, more pressures on space, but we've dealt with that before, and we'll deal with it going forward. Across the rest of the campus, I am amazed by what is actually going on, and I'll just give you a little summary of some of the things that are happening and what they mean. The library is leading a digitized Okanagan history project, and that's being run from both campuses of UBC. The intention is to make available many of the historic records from Osoyoos to Sicamous, and to scan thousands of visual images and texts and so on, so that there'll be an online portal that will be accessible forever for the future. And it's a way of capturing the history of this region. It's a great way that we're connected with the community and helping to preserve the culture and the traditions here. We recently opened a makerspace led by education and with engineering. It's in the EME, and that I haven't yet seen it, so I'm kind of excited to get over there and see what they're doing. But it's going to be a hub for innovation, cross-disciplinary collaboration, and entrepreneurship. So it sounds like that's going to be a great facility for students and everyone else. The expanded campus co-op program that I mentioned Cynthia led, it's in its second year now. It's had over 100 students engage in it this past year. And we have more than 100 work term experiences that have happened. Every one of those connects us to a partner somewhere. So it's another way where we're engaging in the community. And I have to say, it's something that I know from my own personal experience. I was lucky enough to do undergrad co-op. That got me a scholarship to do my PhD, which actually was also a co-op. And the fact that I had some industrial experience in my PhD was what in fact got me my first faculty job. So I'm a living testimony to the value of co-op. And it also got me out of a bit of an academic bubble by putting me out in the field. And in my case, it was agriculture, literally out in the field. Let me turn to research. All I can say is it's basically exploding on this campus. I heard Phil Barker, where's Phil? Right there, our VP Research, tell a visitor recently that we have doubled and doubled again the research funding on this campus, and it's now over $20 million a year. That's fantastic. Our research income has increased by 100% during a time that Phil told me the Vancouver research income has increased by 14%. Put that on a graph, I say. A huge thank you to everyone in the research teams and all the research offices who have made that happen. There are many of you working in the offices and faculties and the research office itself, and to Phil and the team, fantastic. We really are becoming what we aspire to be. Every year we recognize researchers from master's students to full professors across the campus. And just let me give you the names of this year's winners of these research awards. Barber School master's student David Lacho, Health and Social Development PhD student Ryan Hoyland, Health and Social Development Health Researcher of the Year Barb Pessett, FCCS Social Sciences Researcher of the Year, Nancy Holmes, and Engineering NSERC Researcher of the Year, Sharia Alam, a group of research superstars. So congratulations again to them. MyTax. MyTax is an organization that funds research in collaboration with partners, traditionally industry, but it's broadened that definition, so we have some social enterprises now with that. Jennifer Tedman-Jones, who is our MyTax representative here, joined us in 2014. The research funds that we get now from MyTax to support graduate students have increased 7 times since her arrival, and we now are getting $2 million a year to support students actively engaged in research with partners. There again, that's a simply phenomenal number and change, quite extraordinary. And that's supporting people in arts, management, engineering, fine arts, and science, so it's right across the board. We are expecting to be establishing what's known as a StatsCan data center. Now that sounds terrifically exciting to those of us who are not StatsCan data users. But seriously, it's very exciting because it gives us access, direct access to data that is not accessible through any public portal. And that's thanks to Ross Hickey and his colleagues in the Barber School, who were successful in obtaining the funds needed to bring that data center here. That is for our social science researchers and even health researchers as well. That's the same kind of research need as greenhouses for plant scientists and animal research facilities for medical scientists. So it's just one more piece of our puzzle to get us to where we want to be as a truly complete research entity here in the Okanagan. So it is actually very exciting. Data center, not so much. Something else that's very, very exciting and just beginning to take off, and that is something that's called the Interior Universities Research Coalition. After more than 2 years of work, we finally signed off and went public with a coalition with UNBC and TRU around the idea that as 3 medium-sized universities in the interior of BC, that we would gain benefits from collaborating in areas where we have shared interest and perhaps complementary expertise. And so we've done that. And there's already been a round of internal research funding allocated. It came out of TRU, which has been allocated for research going on with partners from the 3 universities. That's the first round. And there's going to be a symposium that will take place, I believe, on this campus, I think at the end of May. And that will be something to watch out for and an opportunity to meet colleagues and perhaps explore potentials for collaboration. One of the things that really makes us quite unique and very different from Vancouver is the really strong links that we enjoy with our community. UBC is here because this community wanted it to be here. There's no one alive in Vancouver can remember wanting UBC to be in Vancouver. Just saying, we may not have that same sense of love in 100 years' time, you know, but we do. They're glad we're here. And we are making a really big difference. We are becoming well known in the community, and part of that is by the sort of signature big events, you know, and the big, I mean, like we hosted the Royals, right? I mean, that's big. Last year, we hosted Prime Minister Trudeau, and he used the model of the town hall that they had here, and he rolled that out across the rest of the country. So these are all ways that, we get to be better known nationally, which is a good thing. In the community, we're also seen through things like Nobel Night, Mini-Med. We hosted a wonderful gathering of global experts around a nuclear North Korea. That was a very exciting event. We've hosted Chantal Hébert, Mohamed Fahmy, and Jay Ingram in this past year. And of course, we have lots of other kinds of lectures and events that are open to the public. This is fabulous. It's a huge opportunity for us to connect with friends. And I like to think that friend-raising is just the precursor to fundraising, which is a part of my job. So I'm more and more delighted that we have more and more friends who are aware of the good work that we're doing in the community. And we have lots of things that are going on. I mean, for example, Small Steps for Big Changes, which is a counseling program led by Mary Young at the YMCA about helping people make better diet choices around type 2 diabetes, for example. Our BARC program has now ventured out to work with the RCMP and to help promote well-being for employees of the RCMP. That's an exciting piece. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I bet there are dogs down there too, right? Other dogs for them to play with that are trained to attack rather than be friendly. It has all kinds of images for me anyway. Faculty of Management is very actively engaged with the wine industry in several ways, and they've been successful in resolving what has been a thorny issue for wine producers and wine consumers, and that is the idea of truthful labeling. The use of the term cellared in Canada, which has been allowed to be put on wine that probably comes here in tankers from Algeria and then gets bottled in Burnaby and can be described as cellared in Canada, that will no longer be allowed. It will have to be identified as wine coming from another country. And that change has actually been finessed by our Faculty of Management working with the Kedge Business School in Bordeaux and the leadership of the wine industry. So big kudos to there for our Faculty of Management making a real difference in the community. And of course, Nancy Holmes is doing incredible work with bees and pollinators and restoration of environments to become more supportive for bees, which we all know are absolutely essential to all the fruit crops that we have here in the valley. So there's another way where we're having a major impact. And finally, just thinking of the things that we do in the community, Claire Budgeon, who, as you know, was on staff but on faculty but passed away, was a leader around healthy campus and well-being. Just recently, the University of Guelph formally adopted the so-called Okanagan Charter on well-being and healthy campuses. And that's a signal that her work is continuing and is now being promoted and developed across Canada and in fact around the world as universities and colleges try to make their places healthier places to be. On the subject of health and well-being, you are probably aware that UBC places very high priority on ensuring that our campus is a place where people can thrive. And you have perhaps seen a missive from me about sexual assault, sexual misconduct, and other inappropriate behaviors on campus, and you know that I am absolutely committed to making this the safest, best campus that we can for everyone on campus. I recently received a delegation of students and professors who were protesting the way that they considered to be our contract employees in janitorial services not being well treated. I was pleased to meet with them. I take seriously these kinds of concerns, and we are certainly looking at ways to ensure that everyone on this campus is treated fairly and equitably, whatever their level of employment, and given the best opportunities that we can for all. On the subject of sexual assault, harassment, or other inappropriate behavior, it's very obvious to all of us that it has no place on this campus and no place in society. We have a particular kind of responsibility here because we have 9,000 students with whom many of us are in positions of authority and responsibility. And that puts us in a particularly important place where I would argue that the behavior that we expect of ourselves should be of at least as high a standard as anywhere elsewhere, and in my mind, probably higher. And I'd like us to continue thinking about that. We are onboarding our new policy. It's called 131. And we have Shiloh Saint-Cyr, who is the director of the Sexual Violence Prevention and Response Office here on campus. But I'd just like us to bear in mind we will be doing more work to have people understand the nature of our community and the importance of us, those of us who are here, having the absolute highest understanding of what our expectations are. On the subject of safety, but moving along to the physical aspects of the campus, you can of course see the new library extension, the so-called Teaching and Learning Center, taking shape. It's fabulous, despite the bird damage. It's targeted to be ready for the beginning of school in September. I am excited to think that the students who've been contributing to this will actually be able to get in and enjoy it, and that we will have some fabulous new teaching spaces. I know Peter Newbury, you're here, and others have worked very hard to try and make sure that our new classroom is state-of-the-art. I know that he's presented the idea and the design to people off campus, and they're jealous. So I'm looking forward one day when I return to teaching that I'm hoping to teach a class in there. Equally exciting, and perhaps you may not have seen this yet, but the Board of Governors approved last Thursday that we will build 2 new residence buildings, each of 220 beds. One will go in the far corner over there to complete the square, and the second building will go between here and the sports field. It will be housing commons, and in addition to having 220 beds in a tower, it will have on the ground and first floors a new 500-seat dining room, new kitchen facilities, and many of the kinds of services, such as a sort of 24-hour concierge-type service for the residences that we haven't yet had on this campus, recreational facilities for students and space for student activities and so on. It's very exciting to see those 2 buildings. They're approved. We are now approved to go to the planning and contracting tendering stage for those to be developed and available by 2020. So that will be a wonderful thing. It will allow us to provide more appropriate housing for first-year students, and it will free up some of the housing that we're currently using for first-year students to be available for upper-year students, because some international students particularly would perhaps prefer to stay living on campus. Let me just turn to transportation and physical access, and for the old hands in the room, I don't need to use the word Curtis in this piece at all, because Curtis Road has become irrelevant to our access right now. Last September, we opened a new transit exchange, which is great. It gives us much more capacity for the bus services. The rail trail is now moving ahead in a very positive way. Recently, the federal government added over $1 million more, and the city is committed to paving it from Dilworth out to here by September. So that's exciting. I'm now asking people in facilities where we're going to put all the bike racks we're going to need. And finally, of course, John Hindle Drive. If you want to walk to see some amazing work that's been done, have a look at where John Hindle is. It's taken 30 years for that road to be built. It was on the books 30 years ago. So this tells you how long it takes to move things through municipal development and campus development, but it's finally here. It will provide, of course, desperately needed second major access point to the campus, and another safe cycling route. It will require that we develop a new entryway, and that's being worked on, and you may have seen that parking lots C and G will be closed. I think they are closed now. My apologies to everyone for the inconvenience. The parking lot where I used to park my car is now the new library. I'm sort of sitting in different parking spots, trying them out at the moment to see where I'm going to land eventually. But this will all be resolved, and we will have a much better campus. It will entail pedestrianizing the section of road between here and the FIPKI building and the library, because otherwise there would be those who would use it as a shortcut to go from John Hindle to the airport. So pedestrianization is a great outcome from that, in my mind. It'll give us a plaza out there eventually and make it a safe pedestrian campus from the residences right across through to the gym. I think that'll be a huge improvement. So all in all, I think that we can say that the campus is physically actually coming along very well, and I'm enormously grateful to our campus and community planning folks and to Rob Einerson's team who are actually making those things happen. You may have noticed on the alumni front and development that we launched a new campaign to raise money for student support. It's called the Blue and Gold campaign. You probably heard me complain previously that we don't have enough endowments on this campus. We're so young. This campaign is allowing us to get some money donated and matched by UBC. Ross and Linda Fitzpatrick have given $250,000. That's being matched by UBC to create a $500,000 scholarship. And they also gave, at the same time, $1 million to name the Great Hall in the new library. So that was a very generous gift from some of our supporters in the community. I'm looking forward to engaging other supporters in the community who might also like to see their name on one of our many new rooms and buildings that we will be building. This fall, we will do something that we have never done before here, and that is to hold our first homecoming. We have reached the point where we believe we have enough alumni to actually think of hosting a homecoming. We have to start somewhere, so we are launching it, and I think there's been a large number of people on campus who've worked on thinking about what a first homecoming would look like. It'll be a weekend in October. It'll be open also for students and faculty and staff. There will be events and speakers, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing students who have told me when I've met them at events that I've been at around Canada and internationally that they like the idea of coming back as an alum. So we will see what happens when we kick off that new tradition for this new campus. To sum up, it's been another good year. We're growing. We're growing in a healthy way. Many of the things that we are starting are thriving. As always, when you start things anew, some of them may stumble, not work brilliantly the first time, and we've had a few of those as well. But we also, as for example with the Ombuds Office, picked up from a failed start and have relaunched. So I think in all, we are a learning community. We're learning by doing, and creating every year a better and better campus. The reason we're doing that is actually because of all of you who are here. Many of you have been here since the very beginning, but I'm also seeing a lot of very new faces here today, and that's exciting. And we are creating the campus that we aspire to have here, and we're creating opportunities for students from around the world and from the region to get a truly world-class education right here. I can't think of anything more exciting to be involved with myself, or fundamentally more important for our community. So I thank you all for the great work that you do. And now it's my pleasure to invite Nathan back up here, because he's going to ask me questions unless you have some better ones. So thank you very much.
I do have some questions for you. And the first one, you touched a little bit on research, so it's in that vein. And that's about the innovation superclusters. So I've certainly heard a lot about them. I imagine everyone in this room has heard at least a little bit about these innovation superclusters, and in particular, the digital supercluster here in BC. So my question is, what is it? What does it mean for UBC? What does it mean for UBCO?
The superclusters is a program of funding that is aimed at spurring the development of clusters which are, the concept is collaborations of industries engaged in related fields with academic partners to spur innovation and economic development. The federal government in its last budget announced almost $1 billion for a round of competition. There were more than 50 proposed groupings or clusters put forward. We here at UBCO were part of 2 of those, specifically around the idea of creating what we're calling a learning factory, which is a facility that would allow teaching and research around advanced manufacturing in the same way that teaching hospitals allow teaching and research around health sciences and professions. So we are planning to build a facility which will allow us to both do real-time manufacturing of advanced composite materials and components, and to use that as a teaching, learning, research facility for our students. So that's the idea of what we're trying to do. The BC-led supercluster, which is based on digital technologies, is the cluster that was funded for the BC region. Phil, the number that was funded was 200 million, roughly. It is led by industry partners. Our factory was one of the signature projects that was put forward. We would plan to use this to help both serve our teaching and research on campus for applied science and engineering and computer science, and also to help industries that are working in manufacturing of very advanced new materials to develop better, more efficient, cost-effective processes for manufacturing. So it's an idea of linking, in the same way that we link in the health area, we link teaching and research to providing service. In this way, we're linking teaching and research to helping to drive economic development through industry partners.
I mean, this is really exciting. I've been reading quite a lot about it, so I suspect in the weeks and months to come, we'll be hearing a lot more about this.
Phil is busy working on this. Yep.
So you mentioned or sort of in passing, you mentioned the Innovation Precinct. I understand that we bought a new building down on Innovation Drive, quite a large one. What's the story behind that?
Yes, so it used to be, it's a building that's actually at the end of the level gravel pit depot place that is beyond our parking lots, and I think it was Bartle and Gibson Plumbing Supplies. And that building became available. It's contiguous to our land, and it actually helps make a little bit better of a place that we can develop going forward from a land development perspective. And so thanks to the financial prowess of our finance team here, we acquired that new building last year. It is, I think, 30,000 square feet. 22,000, see, numbers guy. 22,000 square feet and some office space. And it is a building that will enable us, for example, to house some large-scale engineering type research, possibly some other areas of research. We have asked the deans for their input as to the kinds of things that they would like to see there. It also offers us a space as we look to developing that undeveloped land down there as an innovation precinct where partners may want to come and work with us. It allows us to give them a place where they could come and land, perhaps while they build their own building, or we build the building that we will want them to be occupying. So it's a very, very good addition for us as we start up that innovation precinct.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what your personal plans are a little bit. So you're partway through your second term as DVC. And in the time that you've been here, I mean, lots of things have happened, lots of changes have happened to our campus. You talked about them in your remarks, including, I mean, the TLC is being erected right now. We can all see it happening. The 2 new residences you talked about, John Hindle Drive, again, you mentioned, these are all pretty exciting. And these are all things that you've kind of come see.
Yeah, I didn't mention that we got clean water.
And we got clean water. It's also very good.
I'm just realizing that was like a total breakthrough, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
So these are all things you've seen come to fruition, but what do you hope to see come to fruition between now and the end of your second term?
Well, this is actually a very interesting moment to be here, because the Strat Plan, which is being developed, and the new Aboriginal Strategic Plan, we haven't seen those kinds of plans from the UBC system as a whole since it was Place and Promise, which is significantly before I arrived. I believe that may have been 2009, thereabouts. I'm not sure of the exact date, but so it's a pretty well almost a decade since there has been a system-wide plan. The plan itself is quite broad. Those of you may have had a chance to look at it. My direct reports and I sat down to go through and have a look at what it looks like to us. We like what we see, and we like the idea that there will be an opportunity for investment and innovation. For me, it's a pretty exciting time. And there's something about having a bit of a deadline for me, in that if we actually want to get that stuff done, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, I only have until whatever the date is, 2020. So then I will be finished. So we have to kind of, put the foot to the floor, as if we haven't been doing that before. But that's sort of how I'm looking at it. I do have an interesting sort of, on a personal side, you're asking my plans. Not everyone will know this, but my husband's president of another university here in BC, and he is stepping down, not retiring, stepping down in August, and he tells me he has no plans. So.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see how that works out.
Okay. Fair enough.
He may be wandering, lost. No.
So the microphone is now up. If you want to jump up and ask a question, it is right here in the center aisle. So I'll give people the opportunity to think about that. If not, I have other questions. I can keep going. All right.
No? Well, you didn't give people much of a chance. Does anyone have a question? No? Nothing?
All right. I'll keep going. I'll keep grilling you. So you mentioned the strategic plan, just approved by the Board of Governors. And you talked a little bit about UBCO being kind of within that strategic plan. I mean, do you really feel that we've made our mark on that plan?
I do. And I think that Aspire is very much foundational to what the new plan looks like. Even the language, much of it seems to be aligned with Aspire. And I think that we are, it's not going to be a major pivot for us to move ahead with some of the things that are in the plan. The plan is ambitious. And of course, for us, we are resourced differently than Vancouver. And so one of the things for us is always, we'd like to play big, but how do we access the resources? And my hope is that we'll be able to use the imperative, the ambition of the plan to have people on the other campus understand that we need more resources. And that would be helpful.
Yes, it would. I think some of the central tenets of the plan, I think it really does reflect our campus almost perfectly. So I certainly feel when I read the plan that we are reflected in it.
Mm-hmm. And you should say many people from here were involved, and every single committee that was, or working group that was working on it, had significant representation from the Okanagan. And every committee that was struck had at least one of its meetings on this campus. And that, I understand, was a really significant piece for Vancouver colleagues, for many of whom it was the first chance they'd ever had to actually see and be on this campus. Because you know what, if you were a finance person in a faculty in Vancouver, no one would probably ever suggest that you should come up here and visit. So it was good. We're hoping to see a lot more, and the plan is quite specific about seeing value in people having opportunities to move back and forth. And I like the idea that we might be able, should people wish, that they may be able to choose to go down and job shadow someone or have a placement in a equivalent kind of role in Vancouver, and people come the other way, so that we can exchange ideas and get some cross-pollination going on.
So I'll say maybe last chance for questions from the floor.
Comments, questions?
Comments, sure.
My name's Stephen. I work in the DRC, and apparently the most courageous person here. No, I'm just joking. Just had a quick question. You mentioned briefly the contract workers who are our custodial staff, and if you had any specific details about how that situation can be resolved, or at least brought in line with the Vancouver custodial staff and their situation. Thanks.
Yeah, this is one where we have to look at our procurement policy. The contract that we have with our custodial services provider is fully above board and was, well reviewed and apparently meets the criteria for UBC. But I'm asking that we will be advised by the procurement office and that we will relook at that contract going forward. There is a difference between the two campuses, and some difference in my mind is understandable between the campuses and what people are paid. It's a very different cost of living and experience to be in Vancouver than it is to be living in the central Okanagan. But there's a significant difference in the janitorial staff, which are in-house in Vancouver. So we need to look at that. But we also need to look at what the implications would be of us moving to a model that might mirror Vancouver. So I've asked procurement and finance to take a look at that.
Director of Wellbeing, so just to further your comments on the strat plan, very excited that Wellbeing is in the top 3 for UBC. And on the heels of that, we're developing a strategic plan for Wellbeing across both campuses. And further to your comments, Deborah, that we actually have an equal representation of key informants from this campus as we do on the Vancouver campus. And we're bringing the strategic planning team for Wellbeing over here to meet everyone here and interview people here to get a better understanding of what Wellbeing means on the Okanagan campus. So, and one more plug, if you haven't signed up for Staff and Faculty Sports Day, next Friday, okay? Deborah's gonna be there. I know the DVC's office is gonna be there. Let's make sure that everyone else gets there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, if you hadn't mentioned the sports day, I was going to mention it. Last year, for the first time, I encourage you, I don't know if there's still time to sign up, but my colleagues and I from the DVC's office, we signed up. We have our team. Costumes are essential in my mind. We have our costumes ready to go. We have our cheerleading section. Not everyone in the DVC's office is an athlete, apparently. Last year, we actually aced one event. It was the crossword puzzle. Yes! So we're going for gold this year.
In crossword puzzle.
Yeah, and I think there's the Spike It from the IT people there, and yeah. Friendly rivalry. Awesome.
So that plug was in my remarks too, so I'll cut that out. I'm getting a lot of pressure from my own team to participate this year because I didn't do it last year, so we'll see. Really that's all the questions I had, unless anyone else wants to jump up and ask one final question. Oh, here we go.
Yes, hello. I'm Joel from UBC Studios. First time, long time. Thank you, Deborah and Nathan. I was curious, university here is doing a lot of work in cannabis research, and with looming legalization, as well as UBC is the second campus in Canada to actually look at providing medical cannabis to its students. So that might be something that is going to have to be addressed. Has there been any talk about how the university is looking to implement cannabis use on campus?
Yes. But seriously, yes, there has. My own sense is, for a long time, of course, We've had cannabis on campus since I was a student. Just saying. So that's not new. But what will be new will be that it will now be actually regulated as a product. And in fact, there will be rules about its use that were not in place when it has been being used illicitly on campus up until now. So I think people may be surprised that UBC will in fact have more levers that it can pull around use because it's going to be regulated than there were when it was not regulated. So there'll be age restrictions, for example. It's my understanding that from a point of view of student discipline, it's actually it's more common that we take action against students for alcohol on campus than for marijuana. Because the alcohol is actually surrounded by a set of regulations about age and public consumption and so on. And so I think that the same will happen with the marijuana on-campus usage. A little tricky around things like a prescribed use of medical marijuana and the question of intoxication, because we do actually have rules about employees being intoxicated. And so, unfortunately, because marijuana, so now you've started me, I'm a plant biologist, right? Because marijuana it's a very interesting plant for research. Actually, and all kinds of things about it are really interesting. But what hasn't been permitted or done during the time of it being an illegal drug has been the kind of work on how much, how safe, what are the actual outcomes, how do some people react differently? Because people haven't really been able to do those kinds of studies in a legitimate way. And in fact, our own federal government and Health Canada actually prohibited funding of that kind of research for a very long time. So we have a bit of catch-up to do around what does it mean, and developing, if you like, tests for sobriety. So, maybe you can use medical marijuana at work, but you can't actually be stoned and eating brownies at your desk. That's not going, I know. It's the perfect idea, isn't it? All that stress gone, right? It's the ultimate of well-being at work. So I don't know what the answer is really, but we are thinking about it, and there's work to be done. And I'm sure we're going to have some interesting interactions.
And luckily
Thanks for asking.
And we have expertise on our campus.
We do.
Looking into a lot of those issues that you raised in engineering, and Zach Walsh obviously is one of those experts.
So, UBC is looking at it. It's one of those things where the province has declined to provide any kind of an overall rule or policy that would apply to universities. Clearly in K to 12, there'll be some different regulations, but it'll be because of age restrictions. Yeah.
Joel is always behind the camera, so it's nice to see him in front of the camera for once. Thank you, Joel. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I think we can.
That's good.
We can bring this to an end.
Thank you.
I know everyone's looking longingly outside at all the sunshine. So let's end it there. Go out for a walk over lunch and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.